Shalom, everybody. And this week's Parashah in Israel is BeHa'alot'kha. Because of the 2 days holiday outside Israel, on Shabbat, outside Israel, everybody read the readings for the second holiday of Shavuot. In Israel, it was just a regular Shabbat, and Parashat Naso had been read. So, if you live outside of Israel, this week's parasha is Naso. If you are in Israel, this week's parasha is BeHa'alot'kha. If you align yourself with your heart in Jerusalem, then it's BeHa'alot'kha. So we're reading in the book of Numbers, chapter 8, verse 1, which is Parashat BeHa'alot'kha. And we have to realize, as we spoke about it before, so we can understand the context. The context is that we understand, according to the Zohar, that when a new year begins on Rosh Hashanah, it's a new cycle for the soul. That's why a year in Hebrew is Shana. Shana means in Hebrew repeated, but it also means studied repeatedly. It also means differentiate, to make it different. Okay, from the word leshanot, to change. So all of these together, it's about the meaning of that time dimension that we experience, which it is an experience for opportunity to change, to transform, to learn, to repeat things, but to do it better, more with awareness, more professionally. Shana also is a number. You know, Hebrew letters are numbers. Shin, Nun, Hey, the letters of the word Shana, 355, which is the number of days in the lunar year. So all of that to show us that in the frame of time, which is another dimension, very important one, we have opportunities. Now, we have to understand that time in the scientific world is still an enigma. Still an enigma. Basically, I spoke about it a little bit, but if you just go, what's going on right now in the scientific world about the understanding the dimension of time, it's very, very perplexing, very not understood. Kabbalistically speaking, time is basically opportunities, okay? Opportunities. So every time we go through, it's a list of, or it's a sequence, better to say, a sequence of opportunities. So that's why we experience time relatively different. When we enjoy, time flies while you're having fun. When we don't enjoy, it looks like time is being stretched forever. The question is again, do you really enjoy what makes you enjoy it? What you makes you really enjoy something, we'll read it this hopefully today, it's about the ability to use the opportunity. When you use the opportunity, when you rise up to the opportunity, then you look at time as a resource. Time is money. Time is not just money. Time again is opportunity. When you do not step up again, then you are basically being victimized by time, by everything, because you have no idea what you're doing, what's going on. And rising up is the name of the parasha, BeHa'alot'kha. So how are we getting there? The first, after we start the new year, it's like another lifetime because we upgrade everything. And during this upgrade, we start a new cycle of life. If you really live with awareness, then every Rosh Hashanah is beginning of the year. It's a new cycle, a new lifetime, new opportunities, new asset to build on. Time is an asset, not just to make money, but it's to build upon your own personality. So during the reading of the book of Bereshit, we are basically running the new updates of the apps of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, all the qualities of a human spiritual structure. Then after you do that, you realize already your limits, your slavery. So now you face the Exodus. And you read the book of Shmot, Exodus, in which you declare war against your own Egypt, your own narrow-mindedness, your own slavery. After that, you get the book of Leviticus, which is all about finding your calling for this year, about your purification, um, calibrating your soul, your consciousness. And after you finish that, it's time to become a nation. And the book of Numbers is about creating a functional, creative nation, society, community, country, company, whatever. We are creatures of community. And therefore, the way we fit into our community, that's the way we basically define ourselves. People without community, they basically wilt because loneliness is one of the biggest plagues on earth today. And when you're alone, then you wilt because you're not connected, you uprooted. And we have to remember when people really think that if I'll be alone, I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have, today you can really make a good living alone from home. You don't need to work in a company. You don't need to be part of a community. You don't need to have a family because you can hire everything and make everything work without being part of people that you have to uh, tolerate their answer to whatever. But what is the result of that? When you are off the hook from responsibilities for other people's emotions, you start to wilt and die. And why? And therefore, Rabbi Ashlag, the great founder of modern Kabbalah movement, explained God, the Creator, created us as a social creature. Why? People have demands. People don't think like we do. The point is very simple. This is to force us to get out of our box, out of our dungeon, trying to feel other people, trying to understand other people, trying to be there for other people. No, it's not by mistake that the whole Mount Sinai revelation is based over one mitzvah. Love others as you love yourself. Why, says Rav Ashlag? Because when you try to get out of yourself and be there for somebody else, this is the only time you meet God. You meet the infinite creator of this universe. When you're stuck inside your own box, selfishness, egotistical desires, they're never, ever selfish, happy people. Why? You are in a dungeon of your own me, your desires. You are in your box. You'll never try to break the box because by the only way to free yourself from the box, from your dungeon, is to really care for someone that is not you. I'm not saying it's always successful. People are really burned because they try to satisfy their family members, their community, and the result was horrible. You become a victim, you're being not understood, and so on and so forth. That does not mean that being alone will make things better. No, it's not. The only way we can have a feedback if we are really doing our spiritual journey properly is when we are being tested by our emotions, reactions towards other people. How do I know? Very simple. When I'm in a higher status of awareness, an enlightened status of awareness, I immediately move to a phase in which it's very easy for me to tolerate other people, no matter how foolish they are, okay, or how different they are from what my standards are. When I cannot tolerate people, it's not because they changed, it's because I changed, because I got offline. I got off the spiritual wave I was riding before that. So you have to remember, loving others as you love yourself, it's a mean. It's also a test. It's also a litmus paper to tell me where am I on the ladder of spiritual growth. The higher I climb, the more tolerant, patient I become towards different people. The lower I am, the less tolerant I am, the less energy I have to bear other people's differentiation and, shortcomings. So you have to remember it's one way to look at loving others as a mean, because when I try to love others, I get out of myself, and that it's the only time I really meet the higher power of the creator of the universe. When I'm stuck in myself, it's suffocating, it's dark, there's no light over there. So the book of Bamidbar is about creating a functional nation, a functional community. And we spoke about it. That's why the Parashat Bamidbar and Naso and BeHa'alot'kha, the verb in Bamidbar is Naso. The major verb in Naso is, again, Naso means raise, elevate, okay? The people, the heads of. BeHa'alot'kha has a similar root. BeHa'alot'kha, it's coming from the shoresh le'alot, to raise, to ascend, to raise somebody else upwards. Okay, so you got the idea. When can you raise somebody upwards? It's only when you give them or provide for them the ability to shine. So that's the same idea as Naso et Rosh, raise the heads of, which is the main topic in Parashat Bamidbar and Parashat Naso. Here we have a very specific idea, and we start with God telling Moses, דבר אל אהרון ואמרת אליו, בהעלותך את הנרות. Tell Aaron that when you raise, elevate the candles. No, that's not the word. The verb, when you make candles light, is in English to light the candles. In Hebrew, the verb is lehadlik. Why using here the word beha'alot, to elevate? El mul pnei hamenorah yairu shivat hanerot. The 7 candles will light, will shine in front of the menorah. The 7 candles candelabra, that was the holy lamp in the temple. And of course it brings some question. The lights or the candles shine in the menorah, not in front of the menorah. So there are some trials over here to explain it. It says exactly 7 candles we shine in front of the menorah. Okay, why using that text? And then it says, Vayas ken Aaron, and Aaron did so. He raised the candles in front of the menorah, exactly as God ordered, which means he did exactly what's supposed to be done. But what's so special about it? So the Zohar is explaining something that we have to understand. It's essential for everything we do if we really want to understand what is the Torah about. And that's the beginning of the Zohar of Parashat BeHa'alot'kha. So let us begin. We'll begin on verse 6 in a Sulam commentary of the Zohar. And it says as follows. I'll read first the words of the Zohar itself in Aramaic. If you don't understand, and most Hebrew speakers don't understand that too, because Aramaic is the major language of the Zohar, but it's a cousin of Hebrew. It's a Semitic language used for holiness when you want to hide when the shining of the light is too strong to bear. So it's always to codify. Tachaze, come and see. בהוא לילה דבעה קודשה בכו לקטלה כל עינון בכורי, כמה דהתמר בשעתה דרמש לילה. On that night, that God wanted to kill all those firstborns on the night of Passover, the night of the plague of the firstborns, Atu mezami lezama kamei. Angels, as usual, came to sing in front of God, like the legend is saying, every part of the day, there's a new choir of angels singing to God to show that again, time above in the heavens is not time like us. Oh, the time has passed. It's a new tune. It's a different frequency. Amarlon, God said to them, to the angels, Lav idanu deha shira achara. This is the time for another song. Why? Because it was not a regular night, as we studied when we studied about Passover. It had a totally different frequency, which means time was used on the night of the Exodus in a total, such a far away frequency than a regular night. בשעתה נתפלג לילה, התאר רוח צפון, וקודשה בכו כדין אבד נוקמין. And when midnight came, a northern wind woke up, and God Almighty made revenge against the Egyptians. V'Yisrael avdin shirata bekolam, and the nation of Israel were singing with a loud voice. Uchedein avadlon bnei chorin mikula, and then they became free from everything. You leave Egypt, and you're finally free. And they left Egypt on both dimensions. On the physical dimension, they were not physically in Egypt anymore, and they were not slaves anymore. And on the spiritual dimension, you needed that special night. They were off. They were out of it. They were thinking first. In many, many centuries, they were thinking like free human beings. It was not easy. We'll come to it. Umalachin ilai, and then the great angels of above, v'chol mashiryan kulu, and all the chariots of the world above, havutzaitin lehon lekalehon Israel. They all were listening to the voices of the singing Israelites. בתא התגזרו רשימו לבתיהון, מהו דמה מדמה דפסחה, בתלת רשימים על המשקוף ועל שתי המזוזות. All of that happened after the Israelites, remember, that was the Israelites left Egypt the morning after. Before sundown, they slaughtered the lamb, and they also circumcised themselves. As they were slaves in Egypt, they didn't go through circumcised, they were slaves. And what did they do with the blood? The Zohar mentions they had two kinds of bloods. Where it says "bedamayich chai," you will live with your bloods in plural. There were two bloods. There was the blood of the slaughtered lamb, and there was the blood of the circumcision. They took the two bloods, mixed it together, and then they took that blood and put it on the doorpost and on the lintel and the doorpost in the shape of the Hebrew letter Hey, which is protection. Remember Hey? We spoke about it before. Hey in Hebrew is also a number, like every letter. Hey is the number 5. From there came the Hamsa, which means this is a symbol of 5 fingers as a protection symbol. But the real protection symbol is the letter Hey. You find it still in old art of Hamsa, like the hand, there was a hay inside, especially among North African Jews. So now the tradition said that when the Israelites marked their doors with the letter hay shape made of bloods, more correctly, and it says, and God stepped over, passed over the the houses with that mark. And here we have to ask a question. It says that God did the redemption. God also killed the firstborn and redeemed the Israelites. If God, he was the one who killed the firstborn, as it says, I am and not a messenger. Okay? I am and not an angel. So why do we need to put a mark on the doors? Because God knows everything. He doesn't know who's an Israelite, who's an Egyptian. Everything is revealed to him. Okay? And the answer is a main idea of that parasha. And the Zohar says, I'll make it short, that in order to awaken the ideas like this, כדי לעורר משהו למעלה, צריך לעורר משהו מלמטה. You want to awaken something from above, you need to awaken something from below. You need to make an action. Today, it is easy to understand. For instance, somebody is sending me a message with good news. In order for me to get the message, I need, although the message, I cannot see the message is coming. There's a message coming. Can't. Radio waves cannot be seen with our senses. However, the message has been sent. How do I reveal that message? I need to take a physical thing, a physical device, a phone. And today a phone is an electronic device. So when you turn it on, it can receive the unseen message. How did the message come to my phone? It traveled through radio waves, through the solar network and the cellular network. Can I see the cellular network? No, I can't. However, I need to turn on my device, my cellular phone. Same thing over here. When we want to awaken, call in a message from the Creator above coming through the network of the Tree of Life, I need to awaken something from below in order to have the message revealed in my plane, in my dimension. So therefore, we had to put the bloods on the door so the protection can be awakened. Same thing. on, let's say, Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, it's an opportunity. It's a day of judgment, but it is also an opportunity to transform judgment into mercy, negativity into positivity. How do I do that? I need a physical device, shofar, the horn of a ram, and to blow through it in a special way through certain sounds that they become the codes that I can awake in order to achieve transformation, sweetening of the judgment, awakening positivity instead of negativity. So again, it's not enough just to be positive. You need to really awaken the positivity and the sweetening of the judgment by using a physical device. Here in our case, this is the ram's horn. Okay, why the ram's horn? The binding of Isaac happened on Rosh Hashanah, and here we're talking about the horn of the ram that was slaughtered instead of Abraham. So now we go to that on verse 10 in the Zohar of this parasha, where it says, if we awaken mercy through the blowing of the shofar, we can also awaken the upper candles, the upper lights, the upper sefirot, they to shine from all directions in the light of the living King. Come and see, verse 11. בשעה שהכהן התכוון להדליק נרות למטה, when the Kohen made the meditation of the lighting of the candles below, which means somebody from the side will see the Kohen, okay, Aaron the high priest, the priest, lighting the 7 candles in the menorah. But the word over here is nitkaven. He contemplated, meditated, concentrated to light the candles below. So why using concentrating? How much can you should concentrate to light a candle? Because באותה שעה, the same time, מאירים נרות עליונים. This is the same time that the upper candles are shining. Who are the upper candles? The sefirot. How many sefirot? 7. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. Those 7 sefirot are the 7 candles in the menorah in the temple. ונקשר הכל יחד, and everything has been connected together. Why? You need to contemplate, to concentrate, to meditate, to actively awaken in your mind that when you light the physical candles, if you're the high priest, you light also the upper candles, or you basically awaken the upper candles to shine to this physical dimension. So, what do we learn over here? So, if you want to awaken spiritual awakening, you have to have the desire for it. 1, you need to know what vehicle, what device can you use in order to awaken the upper lights. You need to understand that thinking is not enough. Many times you need to make a physical action. It's not enough to like somebody in order to be a merciful, charitable person. You need also to make the action of helping that person in order to awaken the spiritual light of chesed, if that is clear, which means good intentions without good actions do not lead to any results. Even there is a European saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. If it was a Jewish saying, it was the road to heaven is paved with good intentions, followed by good actions. So when is it called a mitzvah? It's when you make the action together, realizing that the action awakens a spiritual force above. What is the magical action? Oh, you can give charity. But when you give charity, like the Kohen, you have to contemplate, meditate that by giving charity, you awaken the light of Chesed in the upper dimension because you're supposed to be a magician. Human beings without magic are dull, empty, lonely, and dark. And you cannot give what you don't have. So when you feel lonely, dark, and empty, then the emptiness is pain. And then you can apply only pain, inflict only pain on people around you. So why do people are so vicious to each other? Because they're in pain. So when the Kohen lit the candles, that's why the word is BeHa'alot'kha and not BeHadlikha. When you elevate, because you're not thinking that you're lighting just candles in an olive oil candelabra. No, no. You are doing the physical action in order to awaken the spiritual light. When you do that, then you have an ascension. Then you have an elevation. And that's why it's called BeHa'alot'kha. The same thing the Zohar says was also happening when the Kohen were burning the incense. Oh, we burn the incense because it's nice, because it's my religion, because it smells amazingly good. No, you use the incense to awaken the upper sefirot. In this case, there were 11 spices, different spices in the incense in the temple, in order to awaken 10 plus 1 levels of sefirot, of light, in our daily life. So again, what we are doing is very similar to today's, let's say, when I am dialing a number, I'm really pushing the digit or whatever I'm doing with my phone. But if I think about it, I'm not thinking that my phone pulls in my friend into the phone. No, I know that the signal goes out, awaken a signal in on the servers, and that makes the phone ring in my friend's pocket. Okay? So, same thing. When I commit or perform any kind of a mitzvah, I am dialing a number. So if this is a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, I'm dialing mercy. I'm blowing the shofar to awaken in the upper dimension, beyond the physical dimension, to awaken the light of mercy upon my soul. How? You have tkiah, shvarim tuah, tkiah. I know when I blow the tkiah, I'm drawing the power of chesed. When I blow the shvarim tuah, I awaken judgment. And tkiah again, it will sweeten the judgment with the chesed, with the mercy. So I'm not thinking that I'm just blowing the shofar. The same way that when I dial my friend, I don't think I'm dialing that number. I'm thinking I'm calling my friend. Although the physical action, I push certain digits. No, I'm not pushing digits. I'm dialing my friend. Okay? So it looks like one thing, but what I'm doing is really another thing. If you understand that idea, that will help us a lot to understand that every action that we have in the physical dimension has the ability to awaken forces in the upper dimension. For instance, what if somebody kills another human being, God forbid? You not just bring an end, a demise to a person's life, you also, because a human being was created in the image of God, you are blemishing the image of God because every human being is part of that image of God. So even if you're not aware of it, you broke God's image when you kill somebody. This is why it says on Mount Sinai, do not kill. When you understand that, the whole story is a different story. So you can tell a story that he's totally lacking any magic, and a lot of people, they're okay with that. But then they don't understand why is it that they feel that their lives is empty. What's wrong with me? So they're looking for what they're looking for. So they go to look for all kinds of looking for. Humanity is like crazy looking after stuff. Maybe if I travel to the Himalayas, I'll find it. Maybe to the Andes. Maybe if I'm going to, people have all weird ways to look. Well, basically, it's here and now. בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו. Moses says in Deuteronomy, it's in your heart and in your mouth to do it. So when we give charity, says the Arizal, in order to bring spiritual light of love and mercy to our dimension. How do you do that? So the Arizal says, think that the money in your hand is the letter Yud of the Tetragrammaton. Think that the 5 fingers of your right hand is the letter Hey. We said Hey is 5. Think that your arm is the letter Vav. It looks like a Vav. Think that the hand of the person receiving the money is the letter, again, the letter Hey. You have Yud K Vav K, and you force the godly light from above to below by giving charity. You can have, the Arizal is explaining, you can, but what if I don't give a coin or a check? No, think about it. The moment you force the change of ownership, you make that flow happen. So you need to learn how to meditate, and you need to how to visualize, and you need to learn how to be aware of something above when you do something below. Then you become a magical creature. You become a creature that changes the whole of existence, the physical dimension and the metaphysical dimension at once. When you do things, when you say things, you become a whole person. So maybe I'm not the high priest. I'm not. But can I do that? Of course. That's why I need to contemplate, have kavanah, to have that every good deed, every mitzvah that I perform, it's to awaken the above and below. When we do that, the Zohar says, everything now is connected. Who made the connection? My thoughts, my contemplation, my concentration, my desire. When I connect the upper and the lower world, שמחה וחדווה נמצאים בכל העולמות. Happiness is found everywhere, above and below. That's why it says, שמן וקטורת ישמח לב. Oil and incense will make the heart rejoice. That's a verse from Proverbs chapter 27. How? When you have the intention, when you have the consciousness, the awareness that I'm awakening, I'm using the oil to light the menorah. I'm using the spices for the incense. No, you're not. You are using them as a device. When I talk on the phone with somebody, am I focused on what kind of phone do I have? No, I'm hopefully. I'm focusing on what that my partner has to say and how to respond to his words. I don't think all the time, oh, it's a smartphone, it's a this, a that model and that model. I don't. I'm focusing on the other person. And that's BeHa'alot'kha, raising, elevating the candles. Because I physically light candles in a physical golden menorah, but that's not where my thought is. And I know this is a device to activate the seven upper sephirot. I united the world. I created a connection. I turned the world up and on. If you didn't understand that, then the Zohar continues, verse 12. And here there's a famous, one of the most famous articles in the Zohar, and I'll try to read it fast. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yitzchak, there's a story about Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yitzchak. They were traveling. Pagu be'inun turei kardo. Now you have to remember, when it said they were traveling, could be they were meditating, but they came to those mountains, high mountains, dark mountains, scary mountains. אמר רבי אלעזר לחברים, אילו אבי היה כאן. So Rabbi Elazar said, if my father was here, I won't be scared. Because where Rabbi Shimon is, no one is scared. He's a protection. כיוון שאנו שלושה, but he's not here. I'm a little bit scared because the mountains are very dark and also kind of, like in the fantasy movies, they are the mountains of dark magic. From the story. So, since my father is not here, says Rabbi Elazar, then let us study Torah. Because when you study Torah, the light of the Torah is coming from above, dwells among us, and we are protected. And then we will have no experience of judgment. Which to show when you study Torah, you're basically not studying in order to be wise. You're studying not because you want answers. You study in order to awaken the spiritual light. And when there's light, everything looks totally differently. פתח רבי אלעזר ואמר. So Rabbi Elazar opened his mouth and he said, ותנח התיבה בחודש השביעי. He's quoting over here from Genesis, Parashat Noach, that says, and the ark rested and the ark rested on the seventh month, on the 17th day of the seventh month, upon the mountains of Ararat. They have a physical location. Mount of Ararat are the huge mountains on the eastern counties of Turkey, and they stretch all the way to Armenia. So that's why they're always looking for Noah's Ark on these mountains. Once in a while, somebody claims that he found the Ark. Okay. You should understand, says the Zohar, that every word of the Torah is hiding a great divine secret. והתורה כולה נקראת, the whole Torah is divine. ולמדנו בברייתא דג' מידות שבתורה. And I'll make it short. If you think that it says that the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat on the seventh month, Tishrei, on the seventh day, okay? Don't even think that this story it can stand alone. Why do I care? Asked the Zohar. מה אכפת לנו? Why do we care? אם נחה בהר או בזה? Why do we care where the ark rested? הוא משיב ללמד על הכלל כולי יוצא. This is to tell us about the general rule. כי הוא רומז על זמן הדין It is to show us it was a time of judgment. ואשרי ישראל שניתנה להם תורה עליונה. And praiseworthy are the nation of Israel that got the Torah. We just had celebrated Shavuot, Mount Sinai Revelation. ומי שאומר שהסיפור ההוא של התורה להראות על סיפור בלבד, טיפח רוחו. Whoever thinks that the Torah speaks about one point in time, there was a flood, and there was an ark, and the ark of Noah landed when the water receded of the flood, it landed on the high mountains of Ararat. Do you think that that's what the story came to tell us? Why do I care if it rested here or there? Why do I care what date was it? We have to understand that no story in the Torah is disconnected from a divine purpose, which means, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That story, that mitzvah that the Torah is telling me has one meaning: to help me connect to the supernatural, to help me to connect to the dimension that is above all the limitations that we experience in the physical body. Verse 15. בואו ראה, מלך בשר ודם, אין לפי כבודו לדבר דיבורי אידיוט. Flesh and blood king, it's not respectful that he will say things that people usually say. He's a king. He's way above everybody else. You know, people do speak. He just will say something. No, he's a king. And a king, every word he's saying must have a meaning, a direction. So, if a king says nonsense, is that nice? Of course not. Can you imagine the king of all kings, the creator almighty? Would he speak nonsense like the words of Laban and the words of, there's so many things that it says, even these words, and the ark rested on the mountain of Ararat. Why do I need to hear that? It's not polite. It's not nice. It's not acceptable that somebody of such a high level will tell us about something that is so trivial, not needed. And to make a Torah out of it? Wow, it doesn't sound very logical. And the Zohar continues on verse 16. Everything in the stories of the Torah is encoded. And what does it mean? That story, like the story of the Noah's Ark, that did not come to show upon the story itself, but it's about to point upwards towards something that is irrational, that is happening in the reality above. So what is the story? Why do I have to read about the ark? Even if the Torah didn't say that the ark rested on Mount Ararat, the story is crazy enough. בואו comes the Zohar and explains, verse 17 in Zohar Parashat BeHa'alot'kha. It says, ותנח התיבה, and the ark rested on the mount. כל שכן אחרים בשעה שהדין תולה על העולם, והדינים שורים, והקדוש ברוך הוא יושב על כיסא דין, לדון העולם בכיסאו, when the judgment is hanging over the world, and there are judgments, and then God sits on the throne of judgment to judge the world on that throne, because that's what that throne is about. כמה רשומות נרשמו בו, כמה פסקי דין גנוזים בתוכו. There's so many judgments that are already engraved over the whatever is the reality you're talking about. כמה פסקי דינים גנוזים בתוכו, בתוך התיק של המלך, and all of those decrees, they are treasured in the king's treasury. And when is the time to remove those judgments from the treasury? It's on Rosh Hashanah, in which we become so close to God, we can reach up. And with our minds, with the shofar, with the fasting of Yom Kippur, with the Sukkot, it's only devices that will help me to rise and elevate my soul to a place in which I will be so purified, I'll be able to perform magic. So that's why when it says the mountain of Ararat, the ark rested on the mountain of Ararat on the seventh month. Rosh Hashanah is on the seventh month. Ararat is coming from the word Arur, cursed. So this is the time of the year, the seventh month, that the Torah is hinting to us. This is when people need to cleanse in front of the judgments they accumulated so they can live a life free of those judgments. וישראל מתפללים, תפילה היא, ביום ההוא, verse 19. And the nation of Israel, they pray on that day. ומבקשים מתחננים לפניו, and they beg and implore in front of God. ותוקעים בשופר, and they blow the shofar. When they blow the shofar, the holy blessed be he, the Creator, have mercy for them. ומהפך הדין לרחמים, and he transformed the judgment into mercy. וכל העליונים והתחתונים פותחים ואומרים, אשרי עם יודעי תורה. And then the entities, the angelic entities of above and below, they open and say, praiseworthy is the nation that knows the blowing of the shofar. Therefore, we need on that day that whoever blows the shofar, ידע עיקר סוד הדברים, will know basically the main ideas of Rosh Hashanah. What is the shofar about? The shofar is about awaken the frequency of dvekut, closeness between our souls and the Creator. When we reach such a strong closeness with your soul, with the Creator, then you simply jump out of all the illusion and what have I done? What was I doing? What was I thinking to myself? When you realize how much light is available for us, I just need to follow the procedure, the mitzvot. And then, the Zohar says, you have the ability to remove all the judgment that was accumulated during the last year. And then, all the entities of above and below, they open and say, Ashrei ha'am yodei Torah, praiseworthy of that nation that knows the shofar blowing. It doesn't say that blow the shofar. It doesn't say the ones who listen to the shofar blowing. That they know the meditation of the shofar blowing. Because by doing that, we remove the judgment within us that we accumulated who knows how long. And therefore, the Zohar continues, צריכים ביומו שמי שתוקע, ידע עיקר סוד הדברים. We have to know that the person who blows the shofar for the community in the synagogue should know the basic idea of what is the kavanah, the intention and purpose of the blowing the shofar. And that's why it is said, Ashrei ha'am yodei Torah, which is again, it's a saying from the prophets, praiseworthy is the nation that knows the shofar blowing. When is it praiseworthy? When you understand, when you know what it is about. It's not blowing the shofar, it's a symbolism for awakening people up. No, it is really awakening mercy that can turn over the judgment we generated. last year, maybe years before. And because the Zohar says, it says, praiseworthy is the nation that knows the blowing the shofar. It doesn't say that are blowing the shofar or listen to the blowing the shofar, because the blowing of the shofar can awaken upper lights. When we blow tkiya, it is chesed. Shvarim tuah or shvarim or tuah, this is judgment. Tkiya coming after that, awakening tiferet, central column. That's how I balance my own mental, spiritual judgments in the soul dimension. Otherwise, I'm just listening to trumpets. So when they say those stories in the Torah, they have so many layers of hints what is happening in the upper worlds. That's why the Torah is not just a bunch of nonsense that somebody accumulated. And now, especially here, when the Kohen was lighting the menorah, he elevated his consciousness. He elevated his frequency. He elevated his concentration. He concentrated to light with a physical act to light the candles above, the sephirot, the shining lights, illuminations of the upper lights. When you awaken that, it is revealed in your own soul. Then you feel shining. And that's what we're here for. So the Zohar continues to contemplate upon that idea that we're not lighting the candles of Shabbat because, what's replacing the menorah in the temple? The Shabbat candles. So what do you do when you light the Shabbat candles? Which means usually it's the women who do that. But if there's no women in the house, then the men have to light the Shabbat candles. You're basically creating BeHa'alot'kha. It's a little bit different than the candles of the temple, but there is an uplifting when you light the Shabbat candles on time, even a little bit before. Okay, you lift BeHa'alot'kha. You have a lift off. The whole household is being lifted up to the dimension that is called Shabbat. This is a very high dimension. So you're not just lighting candles. You're using the candles to lift the house upwards. So it's again BeHa'alot'kha. What about making a blessing? When we make a blessing over food, we say words of a blessing. When we say the words, each word arouses another and lights up another sephirah. So when we say about the blessing Baruch, so the simplest way to explain Baruch, you have Kaf, the letter Kaf for Keter, Sfirat Keter. You have Reish for Reshit Chochma. You have Bet for Bina, and you have Vav for Da'at, which means when you say the word Baruch, you awaken, you light the candles just by saying the word of Keter Chochma Bina Da'at. You say Ata, you awaken Chesed. Hashem, the name of God. Then you awaken Tiferet. Elokeinu Gevurah. All of these lights are shining because you just said what you said in order to awaken those lights. Now you complete the blessing, the bliss flows into your action, the food you're eating, the mitzvah you're doing at that moment. And then the Zohar says you awaken the flow of the upper river. Therefore, Patach Rabbi Yossi, verse 22. בעלותך את הנרות, פירושו בעלותך ממש, דהיינו It doesn't say BeHa'alot'kha when you turn on the flame, כי נעשה על ידי הכהן שתי עבודות שהן קשר אחד, because the Kohen is doing two jobs that are one connection. Okay? You awaken the upper Sefirot, and that creates the flow of the upper river. And then that can create the real light of happiness. So, there it brings to that idea that basically we are magical creatures and we have to bring up that magic. We have to condition our minds and hearts that without that light that comes in, you will never feel real good. Because the real good, says the Zohar, later through very big part of this parashah, is the light, the spiritual light. It's not the sugar in the candies or the ice cream. It's not the good food that you eat in a Michelin chef restaurant. That's only external. It can give you a little sense of pleasure, but the real pleasure we are looking for is the pleasure of the light from above. When humanity understands that, then will we finally reach satiation. The satiation cannot come just from food. When it's a good food, there's nothing wrong with it. It can help. When it's good music, nothing wrong with it. It can help. But if there's no BeHa'alot'kha, raising, elevating our mind to, by the physical actions, we bring in spiritual light. We'll never be satiated. We'll always be hungry. And when we're hungry, we are empty. And then we are not tolerating. Then we are not happy. Then we hate. Humanity needs the new era of spirituality, of awakening. We're lacking that. That's why I say all the time, why like movies of witchcraft and magic are so popular? Because in the educational system, it's all empty and suffocating. In art, it's all empty and suffocating. In the media, we need magic. We need that BeHa'alot'kha. Now we can understand the famous part of this parasha. There's a famous part that it says, the Torah says, that's one story of this parasha. It's about the celebration of Passover, first time in freedom, in the desert, a year after the Exodus. That's chapter 9 in the book of Numbers. ויעשו בני ישראל את הפסח במועדו. Verse 2. And the children of Israel they did the action to bring in the light of freedom of Passover on its time. But the word in Hebrew is mo'ado. The word mo'ed comes from vad, convention, to convene, which means when the heavenly revelation convene with the heavenly clock, together with the physical action of celebrating Passover. Then the light of the redemption reveals again. That's what Passover is about. Not a tradition. It's not about nationality. However, there's something that is added over here. So they celebrated Passover, and on verse 6 it says, ויהי אנשים אשר היו טמאים לנפש אדם, ולא יכלו לעשות הפסח. It happened to be there were people on that day celebrating the first time celebrating Passover after the redemption, after the Exodus. There were people who were not pure at that day. Some reasons you had in order to celebrate Passover when the temple is existing. We had that already, the Mishkan, the portable temple in the desert. Not everybody was pure because of some reason. won't go into it. They could not celebrate Passover. So they came in front of Moses and Aaron on that day and asked, "We are impure. Why can't we receive that holy light of Passover?" Okay? That's very important. It means they did not see the celebration of Passover as a family event or a national event or Memorial Day. They said, "We want the light of Passover. How can we do that? How can we get it? We are incapable of getting it today." What's Moses' answer? Verse 8. Moses said, "Stand over here and I will hear from God. What should we do?" God's answer, verse 9. If somebody cannot celebrate Passover, let's say he was not pure, he had to bury a family member just 2 days before Passover. It takes 7 days to purify from whoever was in the presence of a dead body. Okay? 7 days later, Passover is passed already, was passed over them. What if somebody was on his way to the temple to celebrate Passover? However, there were rains, whatever, he got stuck on the road, couldn't make it. Okay, so what should happen? You have a second chance. Why? Because what they asked for, we want that light that God wants to give us. If we didn't get it, it's not because God does not want to give it to me. There is this side of religion, of guilt and blame and shame that's saying, "Oh, why didn't you make it? There's something wrong with you." No, that's an amazing idea. It's a spiritual chutzpah. I was impure. I know that God wants to give me that gift of the light of Passover. How could God give it to me? I am not pure. I cannot celebrate Pesach. And God says, they are right. Every year, a month later, when it's a full moon of the next month, not Aries, Taurus, then you can celebrate Passover again. And then you can get the light that I could not give you on Passover. You learn from that when you really, really believe that God's desire to share with you is greater than your faults and limitations, He will find a way to give you. There's always another chance. Never give up on it. And if you think like this, you'll always find the other opportunity, the other chance. You'll never. And what if you miss the second time? There will be a third time. And remember, that's what it says. More than the calf wants the milk, his mother cow wants to give him the milk. It is said about God. So there's no place, if you are God's creature, magical creature, there's no place for the shame. "Oh, I miss it because I made a mistake. So I'll change myself. I'll do my best and God will do the rest." And finally, I can celebrate the enlightenment that I missed last month, last year, past life. It's always waiting for me. I'm never doomed forever. It's impossible because God's desire to give me is bigger than my limitations. When we remember that, everything looks totally different. So then we can be excited about, I'm here to receive that light. I just need, same way that somebody sends me a message. If I don't turn my telephone on, I won't get the message. That's what God's message in this parasha. Turn it on. And how do you turn it on? You raise your state of mind up. No, it's not about the ark. It's not about the lights of the candles. It's not about this and that. It's not about what you see with your physical senses. It's about what needs to be awakened from the spiritual world above. This is a very important stuff. We have some other topics in this parasha. We have also, uh, just in short, we learn, as we said, it's all about forming a nation. A nation is a bunch of people that have the same goal. And here it's about enlightenment. Here it's about doing things to make the world more spiritual, more positive, more full of light. And then you have the traveling in the desert and the revelation of the light. And here you have something very important. The moment you build a nation or a community or a company, it's about people. And people are people. People are flesh and blood. We are not perfect. We fall. And therefore, we have to remember that we fall. And therefore, we have in chapter 10, chapter 11, verse 1, ויהי העם כמתאוננים רע באוזני אדוני. And the people were complaining evil, and they were punished. And exactly just before that, we have ויהי בנשוא אהרון ויאמר משה. We have that verse that speaks about the revelation of God's light. Although there's something weird in that verse, just before chapter 11, the end of chapter 10. It's a verse of revelation of light. We sing that verse when we open the ark on Shabbat, on weekdays too, and holidays. We sing the first half when we open the ark, and in the end of the Torah reading, we sing it when we sing the next half when we bring the Torah back to the ark. Before that, we have a backwards nun, a nun that's written backwards. And then we have a backwards nun at the end of it. And that nun, that means falling, nun in Hebrew, but it's backwards. Which means there's always the Shekhinah, the divine presence that protects us even when we fall, even when we mess things up. Why? We're humans. Humans make mistakes. You don't make mistakes, you don't fall. Okay, in Hebrew, the word is nafol. But the nun falls, it becomes fall out of na, fall. And the nun over there is reversed. To show, says the Zohar, that the Shekhinah is always watching us, even when we fall. Because again, more than the calf wants the milk, his mother cow wants to feed him. More than we want the bliss and the light and the awakening and the elevation, the Creator wants us to elevate. So even if we fail, there's always a remedy that will help us to rise up and try all over again, which is the major idea of this parasha. So never give up. Always get up again, because there's always support and help. Thank you all.